All right, well, thanks for coming to our class today. We are here to talk about bulletproofing our, how do I get this out of here? Okay, we're gonna talk about some bulletproofing our transactions, uh, different things to be aware of, how to get through some challenges. You got me and Chris with you today. There we go. What we're going to cover, we're going to talk about preventing problems before they start, communicate like a pro, navigating common deal killers, and contract to closing red flags. So let's start with preventing problems before they start. So a couple things that I wanted to talk about in this section was structuring escalation clauses, appraisal gaps, and inspection terms, just making sure that we're clear on everything. So I've seen, do we all know that we have addenda for an escalation and for an appraisal gap? We all know that. Hopefully we all know that. I've seen some people just try to write on a blank addendum about an appraisal gap or about escalation clauses, and just use the addendum that we have because they were written by attorneys and we're not attorneys. So, and they're pretty self-explanatory. It's literally fill in the blank. You look confused.
Yeah, that appraisal gap, I have no idea what those three things are in the middle.
Mhm.
Like here.
So the appraisal, oh, you're late. So the appraisal gap, so I'm not looking at it, but the three things that you're talking about that they would sign off on says that they're going to, can somebody pull it up? Be on time, Tara.
Isn't it, if I remember correctly, and they're all pretty much the same, it's the starting price, how much you go up by, and then the capping price.
Yeah, that's the escalation,
Okay.
not the
Oh, the gap.
the
gap.
the gap. So oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking about the gap or the escalation? So the appraisal gap basically says that I'm gonna cover 20,000, my offer's 300 and I've got a $20,000 appraisal gap. That means that if the property appraises for 280, I don't have the right to renegotiate that. Okay. The three things would be,
It's a sale price shall be contingent upon its appraisal or above the.
yeah, so the three things is what happens to your loan? Does it change in proportion? No, I'm sorry, that's the escalation. The three things, go ahead and read it, Kim.
This is not the one I was thinking about.
There's also lunch, if anyone wants to grab a sandwich.
It's the
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so
it's 3 pages long.
escalation.
It's the escalation.
Okay, the appraisal gap basically says that if my offer's 300 and I've got a $20,000. Yeah,
It's already being recorded.
We're already recording it. If my offer is 300 and I've got a $20,000 appraisal gap in there, that means that if it appraises for 280, I'm buying the house. I don't have a contingency. I've got to work with the lender to make sure that I can do that. So you should be talking to the lender before you write an appraisal gap. In my experience, most of the time, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but well, I guess it depends on the individual circumstances, but you can do a conventional loan with 5% typically, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if I'm putting 20% down payment and it doesn't appraise, as long as the dollars that I'm bringing is still 5% or more, I should qualify, assuming that I qualify for a 5% down, right?
Right.
So most cases, in my experience, most cases, if it doesn't appraise, the buyer's not bringing any extra cash to closing. The same dollar amount the lender might look at it like it's a 5% instead of 10% down payment now. But the dollars, the $40,000 I'm bringing to closing is still $40,000. I'm not bringing 60 now because we were short by 20 on the appraisal.
Unless you wanted to, yeah. The important thing to remember is if you're putting in offers with FHA 3.5% down or conventional 5% down, conventional 3% down, they're first time home buyers, and you're including appraisal gaps, make sure to call the lender and make sure that they've got the cash over and above that, or they got someone that's gonna give them a gift, mom, dad, grandma, cousin, whoever. Because if we don't have that cash, the deal is dead at that point if they don't have access to it.
Yep. So just don't try to be fancy and take a blank addendum and write $20,000 appraisal gap. Use the form that we have that was written by attorneys. It's gonna be better, right? When there's a problem and we wrote it ourselves, it's gonna be hard to defend it. Same thing with escalation. That's where you're talking about the difference. If we escalate the offer, you can bring extra cash to closing. You can bring the difference. We escalated $20,000. Now I need to bring $20,000 more cash, so the loan doesn't change. The loan can change in proportion, so I was putting 10% down, so 10% of that is gonna be my cash and 90% is gonna be the lender's cash. You look confused still.
So, okay, so the first one says buyer's mortgage loan amount shall be increased by the amount necessary to keep the loan to value ratio.
Right.
The percentage derived by dividing the total, okay,
So that one would be, I'm financing 90%, so 90% of that escalation is gonna be Chris's money or cross country's money.
Right.
And 10% is gonna be my money.
right, but why do you have to do all that if you already have a pre-appraisal, pre-approval for the highest amount you're going? Why does any of this matter?
Because your contract says that you're putting
Well, I-
$40,000 down.
Yeah, see, I. So.
Yep.
It's still gonna be the same percentage, and I'm gonna go the max that Chris tells me.
The loan is also based off of the higher of the purchase price or the value. Or the lower of the purchase price of the value. So whenever, if you're putting, you know, a 10% down. And the value comes in lower, even if you're paying 300. You can max get a loan in that scenario of 90% of the appraised value. Anything over and above that, you're gonna either need to bring cash or you would
Yeah,
need to
but
adjust the loan.
escalation clause. I
Mhm.
get a letter from you that says what my maximum is, which is the maximum I set on my escalation clause.
Right, which is what the seller wants to see, right? The seller's gonna wanna see that they can afford up to that amount. But it's not necessarily the conditions that they'll be able to get the loan on. Because it's appraising in this scenario for $20,000 less.
Well, no, we're talking about two separate
No,
forms.
no.
We're talking about, so that we're talking about the appraisal gap, which we talked about. Now we're talking about the escalation clause.
Oh,
And I'm just saying, don't try to be, just use the escalation addendum that we have. And then when I fill those out for my buyers, I'm doing, the loan to value ratio stays the same. So,
And then I just ignore the other two?
mhm,
Okay.
yeah. Now, if your buyer's intending to bring that extra difference, we were escalated $10,000 over what you had offered, then you would check that box that I'm gonna bring an extra $10,000, so my loan amount's gonna stay the same.
Hmm.
Right?
But I do it.
which is fine.
The way I do it, I
Yeah.
only use the first one.
Yeah, yep. And then the other big one is this inspection terms. People like to write in their inspections for information purposes only. I don't know what that means. Like, does that mean the buyer can still back out? So people are writing that in, but then the contract, the pre-written contract, if you're not striking language in there, yes, you have your inspection for information purposes only. But then there's a whole paragraph talking about after your inspection, you can back out. So then it gets confusing. So I guess my point is, let's try, if it's truly for inspection purposes only, then I guess my question is, does your client have the right to terminate? If they do, then strike out options, option B, the second option, which is accept the property subject to condition. If they don't have the right to terminate, they're just doing the inspection so that they know what they need to do on day one, get in there and start rehabbing, that's fine. Strike off B and C, which would be accept the property subject to condition and terminate. They don't have the right to renegotiate, and they don't have the right to terminate. So just make sure that you're crossing things off there, because then there's a contradiction between what you wrote and what the contract already, the pre-printed contract says.
Yeah, I would also piggyback off of that, that sometimes vague addenda are going to get flagged by underwriting. Most of the time I can pick up that that's gonna happen, and I'll warn you ahead of time, I'm not even gonna turn this into underwriting. You know, you can have an addendum that's not gonna make it to the underwriter, that's between you and the seller, that we don't, know about necessarily. I'd rather have something that says, seller to pay $5,000 for closing cost prepaids and points, rather than say seller to fix furnace or seller to remove shed, because there could be more underwriting conditions, appraisal conditions. It's also important to note that even if they waive the inspection, and this is even happening on conventional appraisals, items that seem to be a health and safety hazard can still come up on your appraisal inspection. Missing drywall, exposed electrical or plumbing, any kind of expected water damage, or maybe if it looks like there was water damage, but it's dry now, they'll flag it sometimes to make sure there's not an ongoing leak, things like that.
Yep.
Back on the, having an addendum that states that the inspections for educational purposes only. Can we say educational purposes only on a pass-fail basis? And that would give us that, yes, we're still maintaining our contingency to walk away, but we want you to know we're not going to nitpick or ask for repairs or ask for money back.
So I would just take, that section that says you can, one of three things is gonna happen, right? You're gonna accept it as is, you're gonna accept it subject to condition, or you're gonna terminate.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, what I would do is, if you have the right to terminate, you're not happy with the inspection, you have the right to terminate, then just strike out the second option. You're either accepting it as is or you're terminating. You're not gonna go back and ask them to fix the leak in the roof. Now you know there's a leak in the roof. You want it or not, right?
So like, if you do that, make sure to put in the email that you're doing that and the purpose of doing that, instead of doing an addendum that says it's for educational purposes only and it's happening.
Just-
Because a lot of agents aren't gonna even like recognize that you've crossed it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you cross it off, you're initialing it and the seller's initialing it, so everybody knows, because it's been,
Yeah.
a change has been initialed.
Assume that the other agents don't know too much.
Yep.
For them.
So what about the other one, the other language that I guess, I think you had used before about the dollar amount? Like, you won't ask for things over, like, for informational purposes.
I don't love that, and I've used that myself, and I don't love it because, yeah, the question is to show the seller that we're not gonna nitpick. I've written in there that I don't have the verbiage in front of me now, but something along the lines of, as long as the material defects don't exceed $5,000, we're not gonna ask for any repairs. As soon as they hit $5,001, then we can ask for $1 of repair, right? I've done it myself for my buyers. The reason I don't love that is because then how do we determine if it's $5,000? First of all, I've only got 3 days now after my last inspection to go get estimates. Do I get my estimate and then give it to the seller, and the seller's gonna say, wait a second, this is inflated. You've got a $6,000 estimate, I've got a $4,000 estimate, you're under 5, I'm saying we're over and they're saying we're under. Now we're gonna get into a fight over that, so. I've done it, I don't love it, I think it could be problematic.
So I don't disagree with you, but on, back on the subject of like, now you only have a 3-day window, can we just do an addendum to extend our due diligence period?
If it's mutually agreed upon, you can always do an addendum,
Yeah.
but we don't, as buyer's agents or listing agents, one side doesn't have the right to say we're extending this, right? It's gotta be mutually agreed upon, and if you're the buyer's agent, and the seller says no, you've got 3 days, then you've got 3 days. Then you can terminate within that 3 days, but you don't get day 4. And we all know that days are calendar days, right? It's calendar days, not business days. So if it's Christmas and New Year's, it's still a day. Saturdays and Sundays are still a day. And so just be aware of that. All right. The other example that I wrote down on my notes is just vague language like seller to fix furnace. That's pretty vague. So there's no timeline, there's no expectation that it's done by a licensed contractor. I would rather see you guys write seller agrees to have the furnace serviced and repaired or replaced if necessary at seller's expense, paid invoice to be provided to buyer at least 3 days prior to closing.
By
Right?
a licensed.
Yeah, said by at seller's yeah. Yeah, so add in there by a licensed contractor. I didn't write that on here, but yeah. Yeah, it to be repaired or replaced by a licensed HVAC contractor, licensed plumber, licensed electrician, whatever the work is. Given expectation that it's done by a licensed individual, that it's done at least 3 days prior to closing, a week prior, pick your whatever you guys are comfortable with, but give it a timeline, the expectation that it's done by a professional. All right, and then just avoid assumptions. I don't, you know what they say about assuming, so, yeah.
Before we move on, escrow holdbacks, is everyone familiar with escrow holdbacks? So if you have a repair item in the home, sometimes it's POS items if it's exterior and the weather's bad and they're unable to get those items addressed at the time. Cross country does escrow holdbacks. Not every lender is going to do that, but basically what we can do is we can create an escrow account with the title company, with the city, even with us, and have funds put into that account from the seller's proceeds at closing that will go towards addressing those items post closing. The buyer's assuming those repairs. So let's say it's a driveway, but it's February and there's 3 feet of snow. The seller is going to agree to take out of their proceeds $10,000 to replace the driveway after the weather breaks. The buyer's agreeing that they'll take on the duty of getting that fixed and getting the point of sale cleared once the driveway is done. We'll manage the escrow by putting the funds together, and then we will unfortunately keep bothering them until the work's done, because those funds will sit and do not get released until the city has signed off. So that's more of just letting you know, if you run into that, your deal might not be dead just because of a repair item. If it's an item that doesn't show up on the appraisal, it's not a POS item, but it's still something that the sellers can't cover up front, we very likely can still escrow hold those items. So I think it's something like the floors are scratched up, but it's not a health and safety item. The seller says, "Oh, fine, I'll give you $5,000 to replace the floors, but I don't have it in cash. I need to take it out of the proceeds." If it's not an appraisal issue, it's not a city issue, we can probably still hold that back.
So the escrow then goes back to the seller after he gets it
Well,
paid directly to the contractor? Like, how do you want that to look?
yep, so the addendum is gonna lay out exactly where the funds are coming from and how extra funds will be dispersed. Ideally, we're getting now it used to be 2 quotes, now we need 1 quote, we hold 150% of that quote. We find out who's kicking in, it can come from both buyer and seller, just the buyers, just the sellers. And then it'll say, okay, well, 150% is more than we expect is gonna be needed. After the contractor's been paid, if there's leftover money, who's it go back to?
So you guys are paying directly to the contractor in that addendum, because we don't want to affect the lending by giving money to the buyer.
Right, yeah, so that's allowed, it's not a concession necessarily, because it's going toward an item. We get an invoice basically, or a quote from a contractor, there's no deposit taken, it's not prepaid. It's paid after the work is done, and then any extra funds are paid back to whoever kicked in.
Again, don't be vague with that language, so real life example that we're in the middle of a dispute now with one of my sellers. It was a cash deal, so the lender didn't have, maybe if the lender would have had something to say, maybe we wouldn't be in this dispute. But it was a septic system, needed to be replaced, it was middle of winter, so my seller escrowed 150% of the average. That we had two estimates, seller got one, buyer got one, we took the average 150%, that was held by title. It did not say what happens if that 150% is not enough, who's paying for it. So now Cuyahoga County changed their expectations of what kind of system is going to be installed. Now all of a sudden 150%, which we thought was more than enough, is about $2,000 short. Now we're all fighting over who owes that $2,000. So just don't be vague. Make sure that you set the expectation for timeline. Like we said, it had to be done within 180 days of closing. So make sure you have that timeline. Make sure it even says, what if that 150% is not enough? Hopefully it's more than enough. That's the intention when we come up with 150%, right? But if it's not, if Cuyahoga County changes their requirements and all of a sudden it costs more, then what? So, yep. Maybe if cross country was in there, then it would have had a
We would've-
stipulation about that.
In that scenario, we'd go with the higher of the two quotes. So maybe in
Right.
that scenario, 150% would have been.
Of the higher, we took
Yeah.
150 of the average, yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Communicate like a pro. Okay, so I got lots of stuff on this section here. So when and how to be proactive. First of all, the first note I have on here is with inspection results. I try to communicate with my buyer when I'm a buyer's agent, and we get that inspection report. Be proactive, reach out first, because if they start going through a report and start reading something and they start freaking out, it's better. I get that report and I'll send an email, and this is almost verbatim what I'll send as soon as I get the report. Hi, Mrs. Buyer. I got your inspection report. I've reviewed it, and my recommendations of the items that we should be considering as material latent defects, and then list the items that you think are material latent defects. And then I ask them if there's anything on here that maybe I made a suggestion of something that they're not concerned about. Maybe I skipped over something that they have a concern about, so I ask them about that. I usually type it out like I would in the ROC, seller to repair furnace by a licensed contractor, whatever, all that language. I would type it in that email how I would type it into the ROC. Then I ask them if they have any other questions or concerns about the report, something I skipped over, maybe something that they're not concerned about that I put on there. I always remind them there that we're talking about material latent defects, and I usually qualify that by saying we're talking about health and safety, right? We're not talking about a hairline crack in the sidewalk block, but if that sidewalk block is shifted, that's even arguable whether that's a latent defect, because you could see that it's a tripping hazard. But if think health and safety is basically what what I'm trying to explain to them, so that they're not coming back and nitpicking every little thing, because they're getting a inspection report that's 63 pages long with everything about the house, and not everything is material and not everything is latent, right? So they told you on their disclosure that there was mold, so we're not coming back now and asking for mold cleanup.
A lot of buyers don't realize that we don't need, don't want, don't look at the home inspection. So it's good to let them know, like, this is very nitpicky, not nitpicky, but it's very detailed, right? I mean, 60 pages compared to the appraisal, which is a 10-minute inspection where most of it's just pictures and, oh, there's no mold, active leaks, you know, missing drywall, like obvious things, and they're out the door. So just because, you know, the inspector brought up a lot of items doesn't mean it's going to be riddled with issues in the appraisal. So.
Yep. The other thing is your timeline. So, I already mentioned in this class that days in our contract is defined as calendar days. If, you're a listing agent, by the way, don't make the assumption that the other brokerage's contract is calendar days like ours is. Although I think most of them are calendar days, but don't make that assumption, because you're gonna end up with one that says business days and you think you're about to go with a different offer and they've got 3 more days still. So just be sure that you know the contract that you're working with. The other thing I do to communicate effectively with my clients is when it goes in contract. So we've signed a contract that says they've got 5 days to make loan application. Well, what's 5 days from today? I don't know. So I'm sending them an email saying, here's a copy of your signed contract. You have 5 days to make a loan application. Today, what day is today? Tuesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. By Sunday they have, so I give them a calendar day. I say, you've got 5 days to make loan application. That means you have to have a formal loan application in by Sunday, July 20, whatever it is. Inspection 7 days. That means you have till Tuesday, July, whatever, to have your inspections done. I even give them the list of the 3 inspectors again in that email. So just kind of spell it out for them what that timeline means in an email with their fully executed contract attached to it. That's how I do it. And then also with the timeline, just make sure a lot of that goes back to the lender as well, like formal loan application, title commitment, you know, has a date on there for title commitment, or I'm sorry, loan commitment, sorry.
That kind of expectation setting helps us too, and helps get deals, you know, moving. Because if someone's, you know, got cold feet, or they're thinking it over, or sometimes they're shopping themselves to death. They called 15 lenders and they're waiting on every single one to get a loan estimate to them. You know, it helps them say, look, I need to get this done by Friday to be able to formally have an application in by Sunday. It keeps the transaction moving, rather than them getting, like I said, some people will literally try, they were like, they would shop for weeks if they could, and it's just gonna blow a deal up.
They sometimes do. Sometimes
Yeah.
they make the loan application and then they're still shot, then you pull credit at the end of the transaction. to
Yeah.
See that,
Yeah.
they were still shopping 10 more lenders in the
Yeah.
meantime. All right, what to document? I'm gonna throw this out to you guys. Do you guys know what communications need to be documented?
All of them.
Yep. That's easy, just all of it. Email should be your preferred method of communication, just because it's the easiest to document, right? You can save that email in .loop, save it as a PDF, throw it in .loop, you have it in there. I know we all like to communicate via text message, myself included, and it's not recommended. First of all, it's a very casual way of communicating. So if we end up in court over something and court starts looking through your text messages, bless you. It doesn't always look good for us when we've got little smiley face emojis or thumbs up or, you know, that kind of stuff. So It's just very casual, number one. Number two is it's pretty hard to keep documented because you can't just hit print like you can on an email and save it. You're ending up taking a million screenshots, trying to piece them together so that they're in the right order and everything. So email should be your preferred method, but text messages, make sure you save them. Just never delete your text messages. I can go back in my phone and find text messages from, I don't know, 10 years ago, probably. We need to keep them for at least 5 years. Okay, all communications. So when the deal's closed, doesn't mean you can go delete that entire email chain.
You gotta keep everything for 3 years.
I think it depends on who you're asking and what the scenario is, because the statute of limitations on certain things, I think their license law, I think is 3 years, but if it's something with a lawsuit, it's 5 years. If it's fraud, it's 7. So, I'm just telling everybody 5 years. That at our attorney's recommendation. So you may have heard 3, and I think that's the Division of Real Estate can subpoena us for 3 years after the transaction. So, yeah, and getting a new phone and you lost your text messages is not gonna help you. So that's another reason why we don't like text messages. All right. Handling agent to agent tensions like ghosting without killing a deal. So, I always like to assume a positive intent before I get mad. You've been reaching out, you haven't heard, maybe they're on vacation, maybe they've got a family trouble, maybe, who knows, but start by giving some grace before you just go blowing them up and calling their broker. And we don't need to call them every 5 minutes. They might be on an appointment. That's just why they didn't answer your call, and they'll call you back in an hour or 2 or 24, whatever. Also, maybe switch channels. So if you've been calling and they don't answer your call, maybe try texting or emailing. Maybe they'll be able to respond quicker through a different. I know I just told you try not to text, and now I'm telling you that. But maybe just changing your mode of communication is maybe gonna get you better results.
In the same vein, or similar vein, if you have a deal with a different lender and, you know, you're not getting a good response, or you're getting some kind of answer that doesn't make much sense, or feels like they're delaying the situation, I'm always here as a resource and an asset to all of you. If you want to run the scenario past me, just to get an opinion of like, here's what I expect they're probably running into, or this is what it sounds like the problem might be. Not even like, you know, they don't have to apply with me or anything, just to get a second opinion on, it feels like this deal is stalled out. Do you, what, you know, why do you think that's happening? Just to kind of help out.
Yep. Yeah.
So we have had a couple of situations where agents have sent offers to listing agents, and those listing agents are not responding. And days go by, and it's just like, okay. So my suggestion was to text back or email back, I guess, and say, you know, we had submitted an offer, we've heard nothing from you, therefore we're rescinding the offer. Like, how do you suggest communicating?
Yeah.
Call Rick T and say, call their broker.
Well, so I guess it's, what does your client want to do? Are they looking to rescind? Then you can always rescind. And if it's documented in an email, then they can't come back to you and say, oh, well, here's the signed agreement, you know, an hour later. I mean, if an hour later they come back, then, and your client hasn't bought something else, maybe you can put a new deal together. But once you send that email off saying that we've pulled our offer, it's pulled. If that's not the intention, if the intention is just to get a response, can you confirm that you received it at least, right?
They're not saying anything back,
Yeah,
No,
not responding at
and
all.
that within a couple of investment properties.
so,
Mostly invest.
Yeah, it's usually investment properties that you run into that, and, um, you just wanna know that they've received it, that they've presented the offer, right? So, just trying to get them to acknowledge it, and if you can't, then maybe that takes me to the next point, which is to loop in their team leader or their office manager. Um, you know, hey, I've been, right, I mean, I've had those calls myself as broker, other agents from different brokerages reaching out to me. I've been trying to reach your agent so and so about an offer I've submitted and I haven't heard back. Is everything okay? Then I can reach out to that agent, make sure everything's okay, and then make sure that they respond. At least make sure that they've presented the offer, because we as agents have an obligation to present all offers, even if we know what the seller's response is gonna be, right? Even if the seller's told us not to present any offers below X amount of dollars, we still have to, we have an obligation. So,
So does that work the same way when you get emails from people with just an email offer? You get a whole bunch of.
you're talking, I get those on when I list an investment property, like, oh, yeah, my offer is, yeah, it's 40% of your list price and closing in 15 days with seller financing. Yeah, I mean, so that's questionable whether that's a legitimate offer, and I would say just present it to your client. And you know, obviously an email is not a contract, so I would say just to cover your behind, just call your seller, present it, forward that email so that you have documentation that you presented it. And
You can just forward.
yeah, it's questionable whether that's a offer that needs to be presented, so I would just, yeah.
People comment, like, let's say you send an offer, and the agent don't respond. And it's a specific legal, I don't know how many days, after 7 days, they cannot tell you, hey, we will accept your offer.
No, that, if you didn't put an expiration on that contract and you haven't emailed them back saying we've rescinded that offer, it's an open offer for forever.
I see.
So, I would, if your buyer is not getting, if you're not getting the response that you need and your buyer wants to go put an offer in on another house, and if they don't intend to purchase two houses, I would rescind one before putting in another.
That will be enough, right?
Yeah, just an email saying we're rescinding the offer. That's it. Yep. But when you reach out to a team leader or the office manager, just maybe don't, I don't think it's good practice to get very aggressive with it, so I, like, hey, I've been trying to reach Janice and I haven't heard anything back. Is everything okay with her? Like, something like that is enough to get that team leader or office manager to reach out to Janice and say, everything okay? Did you get Rick's offer? You haven't responded, or, maybe that'll help just kind of spark that communication. Document everything, keep a written trail of dates, attempts, summaries, in case things head south. So even phone calls, it would be good practice to, we're having a conversation about something, and it's a phone conversation, so there's no documentation of it. It's, I think, best practice to send an email afterwards and say, just following up from our conversation, here's what we discussed, here's what we agreed. At the very least, make yourself a note and have that in your file that I talked to Janice on July 22nd and this is what we discussed, so that you have a record of it. And that you want to be able to create a timeline, basically. When something goes, obviously, we never have the intention of having things go south, but they do. And things end up in mediation and arbitration and lawsuits, and things have problems. And the first thing, if you ever have something that needs our attorney to get involved with a transaction, she's gonna ask you to create a timeline. And sometimes these things don't come to fruition until 6 months after the incident, and you can't remember. So to be able to have all your emails, all your text messages, to kind of put that back together into a timeline is really important. And those phone calls, emails and text messages, I guess, are the easier part of it, but the phone calls may not be so easy. So you want to have some sort of documentation on that. Stay calm and client focused. Don't vent to your client or badmouth other agents. Keep your eye on the goal, which is to complete the transaction, right? Saying something like, there's been a bit of delay on their side, but we're working, but I'm working on every angle to keep things moving, is maybe a better way to say it than just saying that agent isn't doing their job and I'm doing their job for them, and so. You have anything else to add on communication?
I don't think so.
Any questions? All right. Navigating common deal killers with confidence. Inspection issues, when do we renegotiate? When do we want to walk away? I think we just have to be the expert and talk our clients through the issues. So my feeling on inspections is really there should be nothing that's like, we need to walk away because of this. Everything that I've seen could be resolved. Not maybe your buyer or your seller don't want it to be resolved, but I think we need to take ourselves out of it and put our clients into it. So like, an example, years ago, I had an inspection on a house, it was my buyer. We noticed during our showings that, so it was a University Heights house. There's like the house, the attached garage. It was attached and there was a bedroom over that garage. We noticed that in the bedroom upstairs, there was a pretty good slope to the floor. We're not inspectors, we're not engineers, we don't know what's going on. They liked the house, we wrote the offer, we had an inspection, we asked our inspector to just pay close attention to that room. He's recommended a structural engineer come and check it out. The engineer looked at it and said, yeah, there's basically the house and the garage settled different ways. There was a soil issue, I guess, where the garage settled that way, the house settled this way, and that's why it was pulling apart like that. He said, look, it could be fixed and you do this and do that, whatever engineers come up with, they came up with a plan, and he said it's not like the house is a tear down. It needs some work. I don't know what the price was, but it wasn't so horrible. So my buyer and I had lots of conversations around that. At the end of the day, they weren't comfortable with it. So we made that decision to walk. The seller even came back to us and said, look, we'll fix it to your engineer's specifications. I'm assuming they probably did that anyways after we walked. But, we decided, because my client wasn't comfortable with it, that we were going to terminate. There was a material defect there, right? It could be resolved, but they didn't want it resolved. They weren't comfortable with the idea, knowing that something had happened and just wasn't comfortable. So we walked. But we had those conversations, my buyer and I did, about whether we should renegotiate that or not. Take yourself out of it, take your paycheck out of it. It's not about us, it's about your client's best interest, right? Appraisal challenges. Maybe this is something you want to talk about.
Yeah. You got prepping the lender on here. I mean, obviously, for the most part, it's gonna be up to the appraiser what the value is. So everyone knows, we don't select the appraiser. A lot of people think that because we are the ones that technically order the appraisal, we select the appraiser. legally, we are required to have a pool of appraisers that work through a third party. We never individually contact an appraiser. I'm not allowed to call them. Or say, hey, you got an update on this one? All the communication goes through the third party. So whenever an individual, a buyer pays for an appraisal, that money then goes to the third party company who then orders, or basically they pull names out of a hat more or less. And they call and say, do you want this appraisal in Warrensville Heights? No? Okay. Next, do you want this appraisal in Warrensville Heights? You do? Okay, well, here's your money, go do it. And then they'll go and do it.
You
what-
can reject, right? You don't like specific appraisal, you can choose another one, right?
No.
You can?
As far as like rejecting the appraised value?
No.
Okay.
If I have experience, not that I like with specific appraisal, next time I can ask lender not to choose that appraisal, right?
Yes, so the one thing that we do have access, like influence of, is
Mhm.
the names in our pool of appraisers. Now, there's a limited number of appraisers that work each county, so we don't want to exclude everyone, right? We have a pool of appraisers in each county that we like to use. Our branch has that list. And then we say, we can't pick which one we want, but this is the list of appraisers we want you to choose from. In the past, we have had appraisers that continually, after multiple appraisals and properties, have had issues. We ask that they be removed from that pool of appraisers. I've also had one-offs where it was in University Heights, and the buyer was in contract on a property. The appraisal came in low. We all felt that it was low. We contested it. With the help of the agents, came up with alternative comparables. We threw them out there. The appraiser said, nope, I'm sticking to my guns. The deal fell apart at that point. The buyer walked away. The buyer bought a house just around the corner in University Heights, and they said, please, whenever you order the appraisal, make sure it's not that guy again, which we did. We put in a request to the appraisal management company. We'd like to use the same pool, but not this same appraiser, and they honored that request. So that is an option. That's really prepping your lender. Obviously, I was on both transactions, so I already knew that that's what the buyer was going to request. But sometimes, working with the comps, getting the help to put together an alternative comp list. I mean, as far as listing agents, I would say, you get the best results on your listings if you've got a comp sheet there when the appraiser shows up. You let them in and you're like, here's this, do what you will. Yeah, I can't have any influence over them, right? You can talk about that as
Yeah.
a broker.
Yeah,
As
so-
an agent, I can have comps prepared.
They don't have to
Give it
use them, but you're basically saying, I already did the legwork for you.
Okay.
These are the comparables.
So if I'm worried about an appraisal, I'll meet the appraiser at the house. I'll have stack of papers with me that I hand to him with comps that I hope he would use.
Yeah,
Maybe I have a list of updates that the seller has done to the house, so that, and maybe it's even got receipts or prices on there that, hey, we spent $80,000 on this kitchen, whatever it is. So have that information for the appraiser. At the end of the day, who knows what they're doing with that? It might go straight in the trash can. I've had appraisers say I'm not even taking it, so
Yeah.
they wouldn't even take it out of my hand. But at least then I know I did whatever I could do to make sure that we don't have appraisal issues. Listen, I've had houses that I was certain were gonna have appraisal issues, and they they appraised just fine. I've had houses which I was certain were not gonna have appraisal issues, and they had big problems with the appraisal. So you never know. And remember, an appraisal is just a guy's opinion of the value, right? It's just a person doing what we do in a different format. I mean, they have their own forms to do it, but just like I might pull comps on a house and think it's worth 400, and you pull comps and you think it's worth 350. Well, neither one of us is wrong necessarily, right?
Mhm.
It's just our opinion of value. Ultimately, it's up to the buyer to decide. But yeah, I think we need to just do what we can to meet appraisers there. And a good example of what I just said, that it's just somebody's opinion. I had a house in Beechwood that was listed for 400 and multiple offers. We accepted 425. It was a bank, it was not cross country that had this loan, and they got the appraisal back at 385. We had multiples, nothing was below, I think 415 was our lowest. And we got an appraisal really low, which was silly. We renegotiated it, we basically told the buyer, we'll go down to 415. We're not going down to your appraised value. If you want it, take it. If not, then not. They took it at 415. They switched to cross country
And it appraised.
and it appraised.
Yeah.
So,
I was
so
gonna ask you if you could do that, just, if you get a
Well,
low
it-
appraisal, just go.
you can- I-
It's FHA, I think, right?
well, if it's FHA, you can't, that's gonna stick with the property for 6 months, but also if it was, so it was, if cross country had appraised it at 385, you can't say, and the appraiser's not gonna change the value, you can't go back to Chris and say, order a new appraisal necessarily, right? I mean, you could broker it out now, but you can't
Right.
just keep it at that same bank and get another appraisal because you didn't like it.
Government loan, you're stuck. Conventional loan, you can do another shot, but you gotta go to another lender. Now, I could broker it, where essentially now I've gone, played middleman and sent, the file to another lender. But in reality, what happened there, behind the scenes, what we see, was this a pretty big bank or was it a credit union that they were working with?
Oh, it was PNC.
Okay, so pretty big bank. They probably have a pretty wide pool of appraisers, and this could have gotten assigned to someone that doesn't normally work this market. This happens all the time. The deal in University Heights that fell apart, this is a guy that we were super, super busy at the time. We had to expand our pool to try and get room, to frankly just get it assigned to an appraiser. It's a guy that normally works the Akron market who came up to University Heights to appraise a property. That's totally different. Those are night and day, different kinds of markets. He didn't know, and not his fault, he just didn't know. He appraised it the way
But
he
you're
thought he should.
putting it the same staff. Like, you're putting
Yeah.
the same houses in the same area. the same-
Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to
Man.
argue it to death. Yeah,
6-month period.
it's important too that, to note, there's not only the individual valuation, but there's also a condition rating. If you dig into an appraisal report, which is a rather boring, report, but each comp is going to have between condition 1 to condition 6 a rating. Condition 1 being it is a shell with, it's not livable, it's not habitable, there's no windows, this is like, it's barely a home, or, a property as it is. To C6, it is a brand new multi-million-dollar home that's got the best possible finishes ever. Most homes fall around a C3 to a C5. So, it's a little bit weathered, maybe it's from the 70s, it's got the, old-fashioned cabinets, but it absolutely works. It's a home you can move into right away. To, it's a home was built 10 years ago, it's got really nice finishes, but it's not brand new. And each valuation, so whenever they go in and they look at your subject property, they're going to give it a condition value, and then they're gonna go try and find homes that also meet that condition value. So we run into this with investment properties a lot, where someone's thinking, here's what it's worth ARV, right? Well, it's not after renovation right now. So when they go finding comps around the neighborhood, they're looking for comps in its current. And if it's only like a C3, or even a C2, it's like in very rough shape. It might be hard to appraise, even if the dream is it'll be worth, double whenever you're done with it. So I think it's good to set expectations with the buyers that this, the results of this might not be as you expect, depending on the opinion of value, the opinion of condition, and sometimes where the appraiser, it normally works. Now, we're always gonna try and do our best to make sure it's an appraiser that works our area. That's probably why it appraised, that home in Beechwood appraised rather than, with cross country rather than with PNC. So, any questions on appraisals or anything?
Yeah. Want to go into curveballs?
Sure. Does anyone, I want to open it with a question maybe. Any lending curveballs that you've run into personally? Or title?
Cross country with the lender.
Uh-oh.
Don't worry. The closing got extended. It was 3 months later and they finally like way past closing and all the extensions said the buyer can't get approved.
Okay.
How do we like make sure that doesn't happen?
They were in underwriting, like, or just
So I think what
pre-approved?
happened, like what the problem was that the buyer was stating that somebody else pays for car payments.
Yeah,
And they saw that, but then they found she had a Zelle or like some kind of like Venmo or something.
yeah,
That was the exact same amount like the year prior, like within a year time frame.
in the 12 months, yeah.
At the very end of it, and it said like parking or car payment, and it was the exact same amount, so then they come.
So they didn't have 12 months of payments, yeah. Because it
I
was,
mean, they had the payments from the other person, but then they saw that she had a Venmo or a Zelle that said that she made a payment.
Got it.
a month to the-
that's a tough situation. The loan officer that you work with is extremely important. Because you want to make sure that, not to speak ill of that individual, I don't know who it was, but,
They no longer work there.
okay,
2 of them got fired by the time we got to.
really?
Release, yeah.
Wow. I'll just speak for myself personally. I try and do my due diligence to get every single document, no matter what, up front. I want to, when I send a pre-approval, be able to say, if you told me I have to send this to underwriting tomorrow, I could do it confidently. So not like, I'll take your word on it that that raise is coming. Rather, can I get a contact information for your manager so that I can send them an email and confirm that that raise is set in stone? Or, making sure we get offer letters up front. Home sale contingencies, making sure that we note those and make sure that, hey, we're gonna need to sell this home first, or we're gonna have to have an alternative plan if the home doesn't sell, something like that. Trying to think, I almost wish title was here. I'm sure they have a million curveballs.
Well, I think it was Sean,
Yeah.
that showed this to me probably 15 years ago. You guys have a 10 commandments of what not to do?
Yes, yeah, we do.
I think that was Sean. And they still do it, even if you do communicate it, you or the lender communicates to them like, don't buy a car. Well, they still go buy a car. So those kind of things sometimes cause delays, right? So
Absolutely, yeah. I literally had someone lose, well, they didn't lose the house. We were 3 days from closing. The way that credit monitoring works is when we pull a credit report, a full credit report with the intention of sending it to underwriting and everything, that includes active credit monitoring. So if they go out and they even just have an inquiry, say they went to a Macy's and they were gonna get 15% off if they applied for the card, even if they don't open it, I'm gonna get an alert that they applied for a credit card. If they open it, I get another alert that says a new line of credit has been opened.
Open credit alert?
Yep. Yeah. So we get an alert if they open a new line of credit, even if they have an inquiry on a new line of credit.
So even if let's say, you pull the credit and it's whatever, 720, 650. Before closing, they cannot do anything, even not cannot.
I don't want to say you can't do
Okay.
anything, but we need to be prepared for if they go and open. So here's my example of that. We had a deal set to close, like literally 3 days away.
Yeah.
They were right at the top of their budget. I mean, they couldn't take on another
Mhm.
$50 in payment or it was gonna be over budget. They went and they were going to get a deal on some appliances. They
Wow.
got $7,000 worth of appliances and they were gonna get it at 25% off if they put it on the card. And they did. So we got an alert, the new payment was gonna be $350 for these appliances, that shot us way over budget. We had to scramble and what we were able to do was the appliances were never delivered yet, not yet, so they went back to Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever. They returned them, got the charge taken back off the card, and then we got an updated supplement from the credit report that showed, even though they did have a balance, they returned it, now it's back to zero.
They delayed the closing, right?
It delayed the closing a couple days because we had to get that supplement, but then they could afford the house. So opening the new credit card didn't matter.
Okay.
Charging it mattered.
Charging, okay.
Yeah. But the catch is that's my stomach flips every time this happens, especially when we're days away from closing. I get an alert that a new inquiry has happened. My first call is, I know you applied. Did you open anything? As long as you didn't open anything, we're fine. But if you put something on your card, we're gonna have to account for it. And, you know, worst case scenario, we're gonna have to scramble to get it returned and try and get it taken off.
And that's exactly why your lender matters, because I can promise you, this is what Chris is doing, and not every bank is gonna do the same for you guys. Chris is trying to figure out a way to stay a step ahead of it. And what's the solution, where other banks might be like, well, you just did that, now your debt thing comes off and sorry, here's your denial letter, right? They don't care. And that's why your lender matters.
A huge chunk of the deals I do every year are just saving deals that banks literally just went, I'm good. Because it was smooth sailing up until they ran into something, whether it's an underwriting item or it's a credit item. And it's no longer fitting very easily into their qualification box. And they go, well, I guess you just don't qualify, tough stuff. And they're still in contract. This big bank has said, they're walking away. So what do they do now? We have alternative solutions, or at the very least, like sometimes I don't even have a lending solution. I just have a problem solving solution, like returning that stuff and getting it, the credit card set back to zero. That's not like a program I have. It's just, hey, I think this is a way we could fix this, and we can kind of jump in and try and save the day.
And if they go buy a car, hopefully it's a big enough car that they can live in there, because
Yeah. I had a guy buy a boat one time and we still qualified. It was like a miracle situation, but that was a horrible phone call of like, how much boat did you buy? Yeah. How big of a boat? I hope not too big.
All right.
So 10 commandments, this is one, what's other 9? Maybe it's no time for that, but maybe we can.
I'll find it. I have a nice printout
hold
of
on.
like, everything to prepare for closing. Yeah, not to do or to do
Right.
as you prepare for closing. It's a nice thing if you've got a buyer
Yeah.
consultation packet to put in there.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'll share it on the Facebook or
Yeah.
print it out. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, your walkthrough to closing, the home stretch, see what I did there? Fun. ChatGPT told me to call it the final stretch, and I thought, no, I'm gonna call it the home stretch. So at the end, final walkthrough. I don't think we give enough credit to our final walkthroughs. I think a lot of the times we're just so close to closing, we forget to schedule a final walkthrough because we're focused on the settlement statement, the signing appointments, and we go, oh yeah, we were supposed to do a final walkthrough. Don't forget your final walkthrough. Those are pretty important. So that's usually our opportunity to make sure that any repairs that we negotiated are done. That's our chance to see that the house is in the same condition, less normal wear and tear. But any improvements that had to be made. Broom clean, our contracts say houses are going to be left broom clean. You walk into your final walkthrough and there's a mountain of trash sitting there. That's gonna upset our buyers if they walk into that and now they own the house and there's nothing they can do, right? It's closed, it's transferred, it's your house now. That means it's your troubles too. And then another thing is items that were supposed to stay. Did they stay? Can't tell you how many times we've seen refrigerators that were in the contract are gone. I had my first week as broker, I got a call from somebody that the seller ripped out the rose bush. The rose bush is a fixture. But my grandma brought it from the old country. Doesn't matter. He didn't exclude it. It was a fixture. It was in the ground. It's a fixture. So any personal property that maybe we negotiated, any appliances, that's our chance to make sure that they didn't take it. I've seen people take every light bulb out of a house. And if we close and that refrigerator is gone, we're closed. And then your clients are calling an attorney to get that refrigerator back, which isn't fun. It's important to do those walkthroughs.
Like if they have delayed possession, then what?
I hate delayed possession, and I
Yeah.
tell people in every one of my contract classes, avoid it at all costs, and we can't always avoid it, right? Especially in this market, where it's slowing down, but things are still moving relatively quickly, and sometimes sellers are selling and they need the money and they're not gonna be out of the house for maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. Not more than 59 days, right?
Yeah, 60, 60, yeah.
60 days. Yeah, I mean, it's hard if there's still possession, then you wanna, I would still do that walkthrough just to make sure, but that's the problem is they're still there, so you see that refrigerator's there during your walkthrough, and then they move out, and that refrigerator walked with them, on, a month after closing when they left. I don't love it for that reason. By the way, I don't love it when I'm the seller's agent either. I think, you know, it could be problematic for a seller just as much as for the buyer. So I just try to avoid it no matter which side I'm on, and sometimes it's unavoidable. So. Closing disclosures, do we all review the Alta, the CD, some sort of closing disclosure before our clients sit down to sign it? I'm sorry? No, you should. So I just reviewed one this morning, where there's some back taxes. We knew that there was a significant amount of property, like 3 years of property taxes that hadn't been paid, that was getting paid out of the proceeds. Well, I got that closing disclosure, and it was about 10% more than what it really was. Well, if I didn't check that first, then they would have had $10,000 paid to the county. They would have eventually gotten it back, but nothing with the county is gonna be quick when the title company pays 10,000 instead of 9,000. So you need to be able to catch those kind of things. I've seen, I had a very large sale that, actually I was not checking the closing disclosures at this time, and this is the event that prompted me to start looking at every single one before closing. The title company flip-flopped the tax proration, and it was about a $40,000 difference. I mean, this was a large sale, and it was a huge amount that the seller gave too much money to, a tax proration. Now we have to chase the buyer back, which, by the way, it hurt the buyer just as much as it hurt the seller, because now the buyer was writing a $40,000 check back to the seller when they could have just had it all worked through their loan that way, right? Their loan would, now they have to have $40,000. Your commissions,
He says as he giggles. $1,000.
yeah, it was hilarious. That's all I could do was giggle at that moment. There was really nothing else you can do but laugh. So I like to check tax prorations, our commissions. Yep. Credits.
Can we do a class on how to read that and how people can calculate to make sure that the answers are correct on there?
Sure, title would be that.
Yeah, I bet we can.
They got it wrong to begin with.
I could do it. I review all of them on the buy side.
Yeah, I think, and when I review it, so there's two
Shit doesn't.
So there's two documents that you can review. There's the closing disclosure, the CD or the Alta.
Mhm.
I don't know about you guys. I think the CD, you probably understand the CD.
Yeah,
I think the CD is confusing. I like to see the Alta because you got the debits and credit column and you can just go down and see it. And the CD is the exact same information, just formatted differently. I just find that format very confusing and trying to find tax prorations are split up differently. It just, I don't know, to me, it doesn't make sense to me in my mind. If you understand the CD, then good for you. I like the Alta because I can just see the two columns, credits and debits, and make sure everything looks kosher. So tax prorations, commissions, any credits that your buyers are getting from the seller, from maybe the buyers are getting it from you, maybe from the other agent, wherever that credit's coming from, make sure that your client's credits are correct. If your sellers are giving a credit, make sure it's the right amount, that they're not giving more.
you're on the buy side, your lender should be, your loan officer should be reviewing it. So it should have 3 stages of review. So it should be clean on the buy side. The seller side, obviously, you would kind of be the only representation there to take a look at that. But underwriting, or I'm sorry, closing department takes a look, my processor would take a look, and I'm the final okay on that before it goes to title.
But you still wouldn't know our compensation.
Right.
I do now because of the new addendum.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah, I actually have to make sure that that's correct up front now. So on the initial loan estimate, I have to make sure that I have, obviously, it's still buy side, so on the list side, that's, you know, you'd have to double check that, but I have to make sure that if the buyer's paying 1% plus a 295 fee, I have to make sure that's right up front on the initial loan estimate. So those, I will double check that to make sure that's good. And then with this closing disclosure, obviously on the buy side, there's a preliminary closing disclosure and there's the final. The preliminary one is the one where they have to sign, and then the RESPA, are you all familiar with the RESPA 3-day wait period? So they get a very early estimated copy of the closing disclosure. We try and send it a week before they're going to sign closing documents. There's a 3 business day, not calendar day, waiting period tied to that disclosure. It's tied to when they sign it. So if they want to take 3 days to review it and then sign it, we then have to wait 3 more business days after that before they can close. And a business day is Monday through Saturday, Sunday's not included in that, and no holidays, so federal holidays. So anytime the county or state is closed.
So Saturdays count. Okay.
Saturdays do count in that calculation, yeah.
And do you guys count days the same way I count days, where today is day 0, tomorrow's day 1, or
The day they sign is day 1.
day 1 is the day they sign?
Yep.
So today's Tuesday, my buyer signed the CD today. Tuesday, when we can close Thursday, or we can close Friday.
Friday.
We need Thursday as day 3. We need to
Yep.
be done with day 3.
They can close on the 4th day. So today would be day 1, 2, 3, and then close on 4.
Doesn't matter what time they sign, because if they sign late, you're not gonna see it.
No, that's actually one of my favorite phone calls. It's 9:30 at night. We're supposed to close Friday. I need you to sign this before midnight so that I have a timestamp on it before midnight. Yeah.
And then how to protect your client and yourself from wire fraud and last minute surprises. So wire fraud is huge. It's all over our contracts. Our buyer representation agreement and our listing agreement has a whole paragraph about wire fraud, and don't wire money because I told you, I sent you an email saying you need to wire $10,000. Here's the wire instructions, because I'm never going to do that. But the hackers will figure out a way to go into my email and figure out that I'm working with you, and they're going to send you an email. Sometimes they're clever, you know, they might have, you know, my email address is Rick, or it's rtannenbaum@kw.com. They might somehow have an email address that looks like it came from Rick Tannenbaum@kw.com. They can, you know, make those little changes to make it look legit, and it's not. And once they send that wire, that money's gone. We're not gonna have it back, and that might affect their funds to closing, and they might not be able to close. And maybe it doesn't affect their ability to close, but $10,000 is $10,000, whether they can continue the closing or not. Could still end up being a significant amount of money that they just lost. So I make sure that I tell my clients anytime that I work with them, whether it's a buyer intake interview or a listing appointment, I tell them, you're never going to get an email from me asking you to wire any funds anywhere. If you do get that email, don't send the wire and call me because I need to go change all my passwords. They will get wire instructions from a title company, maybe from the lender.
Nope.
Never
Nope.
from the lender
We-
either.
We have a form in our initial disclosure packet that says the same thing. You're never gonna get any wire instructions from cross country.
So, and I tell my
From escrow then, right?
Only title, yeah.
Title company,
Yep.
right?
So I'll tell my clients, you're not gonna get it from me. You'll get it from the title company. Most title companies will give you the wire instructions with missing 3 or 4 digits out of the end of that, which forces you to call them and say, was this really from you? And can you give me the last 4 digits? Most of them do that, but I tell clients, even if that particular title company isn't doing it, just call them and verify. A lot of the title companies that I work with now are it's annoying, but it's secure, is they're using those Qualia or those secure email things. You get an email that you've got a message in Qualia, and then you've got to click on it and log into Qualia, which is really a pain, but it's secure, which is why they do it. So that's a more trusted way to get that wire instruction. So, and along the lines of safety is, I use a password manager, and I recommend, it's not a requirement in our brokerage, but it's strongly recommended that you use one. I use 1Password. There's a lot of different ones out there that you can use. Basically, I've got 1Password in my life that I need to remember right now. That's my master password to get into 1Pass or 1Password or whatever it's called. From there, anytime MLS just made us change our passwords the other day, I went into 1Password, it generated some ridiculously long 23 character nonsense password that I will never remember. But every time I log in, it goes to 1Password. There's different programs. I'm not getting any commission for selling 1Password, but that's one way I make sure that my clients are safe, because it's really hard to guess my password to get into my Gmail account, versus if it was just my kid's name and the street that I live on. That's probably relatively easy for somebody to figure out, right? So that's another way to keep your clients safe from hacks, from you being hacked to ask for wire instructions. KW will never ask for wire. There's those fake emails, phishing emails we talked about, and then call the title company to verify. That's what I got on that stuff.
Yeah, I usually tell people when you sit down with the bank manager to like set up the wire, just call in. That's what I did when I closed on my house. I was like, sorry, I'm gonna be annoying. I called the title company. I'm like reading it off to them, or like read it back to me. Okay, I've got it right in front of me. Okay.
That's number 1Password.
Yeah, that's what I use, but I think there's another one called LastPass, which I used to use. I got rid of that. I don't know, there's several different ones. Duo, I think, is another one that I looked into. So there's lots of different password managers, but the main thing that you want to make sure is, first of all, that they're encrypted so that it's not easy to hack into their vault, or whatever you want to call where you keep your passwords. And then two-factor authentication is another way to keep yourself and your client safe. As annoying as that is, that you have to you put in your password and then you gotta get a text message and then copy that text message. Um, sometimes those things are annoying, but it's worth it. They're secure. All right. That's our show today. Do you guys have questions? Yeah.
So when we do the 3-day walkthrough, I've noticed some from houses that I've listed that they have a 3-day walkthrough addendum that kind of clarifies everything that says, okay, we did the walkthrough, everything's cool. We sign it, the seller signs it, the buyer signs it. Can we don't have one like that. Can I just copy one from another?
You can send it to me and I can review it and see if it's something that we wanna add. I never have my clients sign off on the walkthrough.
I feel like we should. I don't know. I feel like it's.
Well, they're at closing, they're gonna be signing off saying that they've removed all contingencies. That's something the title company is gonna have them sign, that there's no more contingencies. So they'll have to sign that. That includes the walkthrough. Just like I never removed the finance contingency either, right? So.
So if you get to the house and it is full of garbage, would you call the other agent like, hey, the house isn't cleaned out, or like, what's the?
Call and send an email, because going back to that communication. But yeah, hey, the house is not broom clean, there's damage to the property. We're not closing until this is done. Please let me know when your client's gonna go back and take out that trash. We'll come through, do another walkthrough, and then we'll close.
With the walkthrough, the client still owns the house. Right?
The seller still owns the house, yeah, the
So
walkthrough.
they still be in there, move out, right?
Yeah, they could.
So.
And that happens often, right? Like sometimes it's like, okay, there's, it's not a pile of trash in the living room, but there's a trash bag sitting there, but it's clear that they're still, they're still coming back, like, okay, and you know what, and if they don't take that last trash bag out and I gotta haul a bag of trash out, then so be it. But if the house is trashed or that refrigerator's missing,
If they're still living there, the refrigerator's gonna be there.
Right. I guess so I have a listing now. And
Well,
me
but
and
you
this
have-
agent are having issues a little bit, but she's like, well, your client needs to be out by the walkthrough. There's no rule that says they have to be out 3 days prior to closing.
no, but they can do they can delay the walkthrough. I mean, I just had this too. I had a seller we were closing on the 15th and their movers were there on the 14th, and I didn't like having to make that call to the buyer's agent, but I called the buyer's agent and said, you guys can do your walkthrough, but just know that they're not gonna be out till the 14th in the evening, so come by at 6 PM or come by at 8 or 9 in the morning before closing the next morning. And I didn't like it either for my seller, because guess what? If there is a problem, that doesn't give my seller much time to fix it either, right? It's like, hey, you forgot to empty the cabinet in the laundry room and it's full of junk. That gives them an hour to stop what they're doing and run back, and it's not good for anybody, right? I mean, the whole point is, it's not good for the buyer, but it's also, even when you represent the seller, it's not great when they're still there. So. Anything else? All right,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thanks.
Otherwise, there we go.
Thank you.